With political season well underway in the United States ahead of the November election, this unpredictable period raises a lot of important questions. Who's going to be our next president? Is American democracy on the line? And perhaps, above all else, what's with all those elephants and donkeys? We've all seen these creatures on everything from plush dolls to statuettes to napkins to boxes of macaroni and cheese. And for more than 2 centuries, they've endured as the mascots of our nation's 2 leading political parties. Indeed, at the 2024 Republican Convention, there's our fair elephant, almost literally taking center stage on this video screen, next to another screen of a band playing filler music like Doobie Brothers covers for 45 minutes after a teleprompter broke. But even though our politics may often resemble the chaos of a circus, considering a circus elephant recently got loose and rampaged Montana, as we told you about here on your news refresh, please subscribe, it is worth pointing out that these creatures were indeed domesticated for our entertainment.
He draws a panicky elephant sort of stumbling through the planks of its platform.
That's a curator with the Smithsonian American History Museum, and she's talking about Thomas Nast, our country's most famous political cartoonist, who, according to the museum, first rendered the Republican elephant back in 1874, plotting through the planks of the party's own platform, including inflation, reconstruction, repudiation, and reform.
So the elephant is a large creature. It's usually titled the Republican vote, meaning the Republican vote is huge, but the creature itself can be panicky and easy to startle and charge. And so you see the elephant used a lot that way.
Political cartoons, as the Library of Congress notes, have been published since the days of Benjamin Franklin. Indeed, sometimes by Franklin himself, like in this famous cartoon of his that is now a flag, a mini flag, and a water bottle caddy. They're editorial works that express an artist's opinion. And even though they can range widely in both message and quality, from the inscrutable to the on-the-nose obvious to, whatever this is, one thing is certain: they're often quite literally insult comics. Here's another curator with the Smithsonian American History Museum on the Democratic donkey.
Well, the donkey is the older one, originally associated with Andrew Jackson, and they got pretty easily from Jackson to jackass to donkey. Most Americans in a rural nation were familiar with donkeys, and it was an easy reference.
Yeah, so for all the clever Etsy gear reading "Don't be a dumbass," "Don't be an ass in November," and "A felon for president is better than an ass," the ass is already a joke that's like 200 years old. Though for a party that's routinely said to be in disarray, check out this satirical cartoon from the election of 1844, where there's a lot going on that's both incredibly old and incredibly familiar. Okay, that's the Democratic Party's Andrew Jackson up front, guiding a donkey carrying presidential candidate James K. Polk and VP candidate George Mifflin Dallas. Andrew Jackson was one of the Democratic Party's founders, and Polk was a protege of Jackson, who was leading them half a mile to Salt River, which the Library of Congress notes is a figure of speech for political disaster. Now, from this basket attached to the ass, Polk compares their political fortunes to an old moralistic children's book. Speaking, "I feel like the baby in the primer, only born to weep and die." Mifflin retorts, "This is not quite so bad as if we were riding to the gallows." And then, oh, look, from behind, other Democratic Party founder, Jackson's second vice president, and one-term president himself, Martin Van Buren, is seen in the body of a fox. A sly character now helpless, dragged from the tail of the ass and crying out, "I wish you would stop long enough to let me define my position, for our sufferings is intolerable." Given that he struggled to articulate some policies as he tried to secure the Democratic nomination again, but ultimately failed. And then, from the front, Jackson shouts at Van Buren, "Be quiet, Matty. The honor of traveling in my company ought to satisfy you." Suggesting even after leaving office, his policies and influence continued to hold the reins of the Democratic Party. Now, for those who think they might see some modern parallels in an old president who's been around forever, facing an onslaught of criticism and defeatism, as he's seen leading his party towards disaster, well, the Democrats ended up winning that election. So how about that? Now, over the years, much like Mickey Mouse or Charles Entertainment Cheese himself, the original rough edges of these all-American creatures have been smoothed out, suggesting a culture that's made the mascots of its prevalent political identities a bit more friendly.
They become much more just physically rounded. They have softer, rounded edges. They don't rampage as much as they might rear up or kick or raise their trunk, but they're not violent animals anymore. They're not aggressive.
But just because an elephant and a donkey might seem cute when rendered in plush, that doesn't mean they've lost their original meaning. Pure trash talk.
But what's really important about both the donkey and the elephant is that they're insults from a time when partisanship is really high and there's a lot of antagonism between the parties. These are not cuddly symbols. These are insults and jibes at parties that seem like they're on the brink of disaster.
And indeed, in a time that's as politically fraught as ours, this curator observes to the Associated Press that, in spite of the days of cute and pettable symbols, some real, some not so real, this doesn't exactly seem like a moment where we're trying to cuddle up with the hat of a stranger.
Especially as our politics gets more partisan and aggressive again, red versus blue seems easier, more direct, more combative, and that cuddly, domesticated animal, it seems to be falling away a little bit.
It is worth pointing out that at least since the early 90s, Gallup has found that most Americans don't identify as Republican or Democratic, but instead as independent. Though if independents need their own mascot, let's maybe stay away from the dog, which RFK Jr. here claims is actually a goat. I'm Greg Ott, and this is your daily news refresh. We put out new weird and interesting news stories like these each and every day. So please like this video, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and leave us a cartoon in the comments so we know what you think.